was eerily quiet. And then my mind was kind of like, the head in the fishbowl.
Then it takes me into the bathroom and says, this is how you brush your teeth. Brush, rinse, repeat. Brush, rinse, repeat. Brush, rinse, repeat.
But there were 2 girls, and it was like, you'll have to give us a ride. You can't tell us no. You can't refuse us. He'll let us in his car.
The thoughts were all alone in this empty void, the head in the fishbowl.
This doesn't look right. They got close enough where he said he could see, their eyes and how intelligent they seem. This doesn't look right.
These gremlin-type creatures.
This doesn't look right.
No pupils, no iris. 3 fingers. 3 long fingers. And this is when the mental torture.
And then it was eerily quiet.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah, we're rolling.
Every time, dude. Every time.
Anyway, you guys guess who this is? Are you surprised? No, honestly, I've been here the whole time. I've just been sleeping on the couch.
Yeah. We really have. You've really been here the entire time. We just been fooling everybody. It's just every time we get ready to start the podcast, you're usually asleep throughout the entire thing.
Well, see, the thing
That's
is,
what's really been going on.
yeah, my life degraded back into homelessness again, and so Rob was nice enough to let me stay on the couch here in the studio.
Yeah, he's got a couple of nice couches to crash on, and that's your couch, dude. That's your sleepy time couch over there.
Well, now that we're not recording Sundays, it's not sleepy time for me. I'm wide awake, and my New Year's resolution was to drink less and be hungover less. And
of course, you do have some old smoky over there.
Yes.
Well, what is that? What is that you're drinking on? What's that? What's that
mango
called?
habanero that my brother gave me just because.
Yeah, I had like a couple of sips right before we started, and it's just,
It's tasty and delicious is what it is.
It tastes like just horrible candy to me. I don't know.
Rob and I have the constitution to handle it because we're the man.
That's right. Yeah.
I guess I'm not a man then. I guess I just can't take it. Oh my God. Well, we have missed you, sir.
Man, I miss you
and the
guys,
audience has missed you.
They have, and them reaching out to me, messaging me on Facebook, talking about where are you at and stuff like that. When are you coming back? I was just like, dude, you know what? I can open up my busy schedule to be here.
See, you have fans. You have fans out there. I think we have to thank Chris Wolford, don't we?
Yeah,
because he was the one. One of the ones that
because that's my homie.
You.
Yeah,
that's your homie. Yeah, you guys both love metal, so
yeah, we like pretty much every one of each other's statuses.
Good. Rob, how the hell are you?
I'm great, man. How have you been since last night?
Oh yeah, that's right. It was last night. It's supposed to be a week between, dude.
Sorry.
Do you remember?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Breaking down the
audio magic,
the audio wall or whatever.
Never let him behind the scenes.
So how's life?
Oh, it's
got
good.
that big old scar in your hand.
Yeah, I got some scotch. I got a cigar. Some friends.
I told Rob he looked like Sarge from Quake 3.
You're a true producer, Rob. You got with a cigar and you just bark orders at people and
yeah, like the scary 70s, like I'll kick your ass kind of producer though.
Yeah.
The one that's all coked up.
Yeah.
the need more cowbell producers. Do you think we should get some more cowbell and Conspirinormal? Think we need some?
I mean, it never hurts.
I've always wanted to do like a mix CD, or I guess now you have to do a playlist of just like Cowbell's greatest hits. So you'd have like Nazareth, Hair of the Dog.
Yeah, you'd even have metal songs too, though. There's
like,
a bunch of metal songs.
Slow Ride.
With heavy cowbell in them.
Yeah, what was up with the 70s and cowbell? Why was that such a thing?
Sounds
Come on,
good.
musical guys. You
It
might know
sounds
some
good.
of this.
Well, like not even talking about like actual drum set cowbell. Think about hip hop and rap, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's more cowbell in that genre than any other.
So, Luke, I understand that you have been working on a lot of songs lately.
Yeah, I realized that
We actually played one on the show. Played the Glow song.
Oh God, please no!
I actually had somebody ask who it was. Somebody said that they liked it and asked who it was.
For real?
Yeah, I tagged you on that on Facebook.
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't like it. Actually, I deleted that song. So I was gonna say
I
like
like it. I think it's a good song.
I feel like all my songs I've made up to this point are shit. So I've been like just completely obsessed with watching tutorials with all my free time. Like that's where all my free time goes into now. Is I want.
That's where he's been, guys.
Yeah.
he's going to become a hip hop mogul here pretty soon.
Not just hip hop, dude. I'm trying to do like multi-platform, and that's what's eating up all the time.
I want to hear this one that you wrote for Adam.
Yeah,
We should tack it on to the end of the show.
yeah, we should. You need to get that to me so we can put that on the end of this show.
Well, I mean, that's possible.
It's your new wave song, man.
I only spent like 20 minutes making it or something, so I could put another 30 minutes into it.
He knew that I was coming over, and so he made a new wave style song in like 30 minutes or something.
Yeah.
So I go over there and he plays me this song. It's called Promises. Sounds just like the Cars. Although I did find a new wave song that sounded very reminiscent of it. So I think you're channeling some things.
Well, you're gonna find a lot of new wave songs that are pretty similar.
Yeah, well, it's all about electronic drums and that kind of stuff.
My biggest new wave influence is Silent Circle. What did I say at the time? I don't think their circles are so silent.
There's a lot going on there. There's too much to. I was gonna say unpack, but that might be a little inappropriate.
Oh, we're packing.
See, that's why we love you, Luke. That's why the audience loves you. Because you just you just incredibly offensive yet funny at the same time.
I wouldn't have it any other way. I love being offensive.
Absolutely. How's the fry life? How's that fry life going?
Man, I have actually mastered fry since last time I was on. Mm-hmm. It's been my lifelong dream.
You are a master of the fry.
Honestly, though, dude, the GM tells me on a regular basis that you're our most valuable asset. Like, please don't quit this job. She's like, please don't quit. Meanwhile, my brother's vice chairman of his company and makes, like $75,000-$80,000 a year. Here I am. Yeah.
The most valuable fry guy.
The most valuable fry guy in East Nashville.
We can read a shirt that says that. The most valuable fry guy
I actually
in East
have
Nashville.
one. Yeah, but not most valuable, but it says Walmart University fry training program.
That's awesome, dude. That is awesome. Well, guys, tonight we've got on Wren Collier, and this will be the second time that Wren has been on the show, and don't really know what to expect. I just hit up Wren, and I heard him drop some hints about kind of his political views, and his political views are rather unlike any of the other guests that we've had on the show, as in like he's like really kind of ultra left, like almost like, well, I think he describes himself as a communist. So this will be interesting. I think it'll be a good discussion. But I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin with him too. Do you guys know anything about that, about Bitcoin?
All I know is it's like a virtual currency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I think makes a lot of sense as far as the future. I think that's kind of where things are going to go. And I think it was kind of inevitable. Because, I mean, it's, money only holds the value that we put into it, that we believe in it. It's the only reason it works anyway. So it doesn't need to be like, it's not the coins in your pocket are worth what they say they're worth. They're not made of gold or silver or anything anymore.
Sure. Yeah, not anymore. It's like 1973. Everything's pretty much fiat currency.
Yeah.
Not backed by anything.
So what's the difference if it's like a paper note or if it's just like a ones and zeros in a computer, which is most of what everything is anyways, transferring from bank to bank to bank to bank.
This is true. But
The thing is that like apparently, I mean, it's been like it raises like really high in value, and I think it took a dip today, the day we're recording this, on the 23rd. What do you know about it?
I know enough that like if you started out, okay, well let me go back. Several years ago, I had some nerd friends that were buying the Bitcoin crates that cost them several $100s, and they were chipping off the remainders and stuff, and like they were building up Bitcoins that were like virtually worthless back then, but it was a hobby for them back then. They weren't making any money from it, but it was like a nerd sort of niche thing to get into. And those that just like held on to their Bitcoin accounts and just forgot about them. Now, those Bitcoin that used to be worth like 40 cents each or something like that have become like thousands of dollars each. So,
Yeah. I just looking something up here, and it says that
That's what I don't understand. I thought people were just investing in like the stock of it, but it's the actual currency itself that the value is raising.
right, it's the actual currency.
yeah.
And I don't know how it's determined. I have
like-
absolutely no idea.
Well,
It's sort of like an exchange rate thing, right? It's an international currency or something.
it's just like any other currency that's not cryptocurrency, but any real currency that's ever existed. Like the people are the ones that are responsible for placing the value in it. So like everyone started jumping on board, seeing or noticing that people were like getting a payout from it. So, because of that, everyone jumping on board, like the value goes up and up and up. The more people invest in it.
but are people actually cashing in on it? Like actually cashing?
They were, but it's declining now, because it became so popular. Social media, the news, even everyone started talking about it, and so now it's devaluing at a rapid pace because people are dropping out because they're afraid of
right.
they're afraid of losing what they've gained so far. So
Which kind of seems like a run on the stock market or a run on a bank.
It's
seems like
similar.
where it's the
Well, it's just something new that increased, and it'll find its place and balance out and plateau, and then then
Right.
that'll be it.
Yeah.
But
Well, here's some levels on it. This is just from Googling just now on my phone. It says volatile cryptocurrency hit a record high when it passed $19,850 in mid-December, but then tumbled rapidly, falling to below $12,000 within days. Its value has shifted unpredictably ever since, with frequent wild drops and recoveries. However, it now appears to be on the up. It is worth $11,340 as of Tuesday afternoon, UK time, according to the Coinbase exchange. So that's the latest on it. That's about $11,000. I guess that's pure per coin. So, I mean, where do people even I guess this is just information that's like stored on the computer, or they buy them somewhere.
It's all just digital,
Yeah.
right?
And then the mining stuff. Do you understand that? How that works?
Well, yeah. I don't know nowadays, but like I was saying before, I know what they were doing earlier because people actually are making transactions with Bitcoin. And I've never actually seen a site myself that accepts Bitcoin, but apparently someone's making transactions trading.
Yeah.
And there was always just less than a penny in relation to real money exchanges going on, and the bit mining crates that you could buy and build yourself, which were little servers, like little server crates. You could collect those remainders that were happening on a mass scale if you found the channels that it was going through.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's how they were collecting all these little cent remainders, and it was building up.
I got you. So currently, according to Coinbase, I clicked on that link. It says it's $10,580 is the value right now as of, what is the day? The 23rd? Yeah. And that's from a high of like 17,027. It looks like. So different information, but that could be just the latest info. Now, I have heard that in Asheville, North Carolina, for some reason, there's like a Bitcoin, there's like a vending machine or something that takes Bitcoin, or or something like that. What can you buy with it though?
Well,
you actually buy anything with it?
Yeah, I don't know. That would be a simple Google search if you just typed in, like what actually uses Bitcoin as a payment method.
Okay.
I'm sure it would give you a list, but
so we'll type in who uses Bitcoin. Let's see here. And that's really not giving me much. Who accepts Bitcoins as payment? List of companies.
I can just hear so many people scoffing right now in my head.
well, the thing is that I'm new to this.
Yeah, me too.
And
all three of us.
Well, actually, I remember hearing about it back on like the No Agenda podcast. I'm talking about it in 2012, 2013. And then I didn't really hear anything about it. I mean, Guy Malone was talking about it when we were in Roswell. He was telling me some stuff, and that was that was in the middle of last year. But then all of a sudden in like November and December and this month, all of a sudden people have been talking about it a lot.
Right.
And I went on the Nox Mente podcast, and the hosts of that, they both are like Bitcoin, I guess, investors, and they were really talking it up. And I've heard the Cruising with State guys. I'll give them a shout out. They're some of your biggest fans, Luke.
Oh, nice.
Remember those were the guys we talked to, and then we went on that other podcast. But anyway, so list of companies who accept Bitcoins as payments: KFC Canada, Overstock.com, Subway, Microsoft, Reddit, Virgin Galactic, OkCupid, Namecheap, Cheap Air, Expedia, Gift, Newegg, Wikipedia. I guess that's donations.
Yeah.
Alza, the Internet Archive, Bitcoin.travel, makes sense. Pembury Tavern, Old Fitzroy, the Pink Cow, the Pirate Bay. Now, I remember that, the
Donation.
Pirate Bay thing. Okay.
Everything's free there, so donation.
Yeah, well, no, I'm thinking of something else, actually. Yeah. Actually, what I'm thinking of is the Silk Road. Remember the Silk Road?
Mm-mm.
That's what they were talking about on No Agenda. Silk Road was a website where you could buy like illegal drugs and get them shipped to you.
Oh, it's probably on the dark web.
And
now.
it only, it is. Because it got pretty much shut down, and the owner of it, the owner of it got like prosecuted and arrested.
Yeah.
So those are some of the ones. Pizzaforcoins.com, Whole Foods. That makes sense. I'm going to go to Whole Foods and use my Bitcoin. A-Class Limousine, Mint.com. I just wonder if this is going to come crashing down or this is here to stay. So I think when we get Wren on, we'll ask him about that.
Man, I would bet on here to stay because already it's been like, something like 10 years or almost 10 years?
I don't know. Because I remember hearing about it in 2012. It might have started then.
2009 is when it started.
2009. Okay. But nobody, I don't remember much of anybody talking about it. But there's all these other cryptocurrencies too now. So I wonder how
they're all trying to just jump ship.
They are faring. Yeah.
But see, that's I was
jump
trying
on the bandwagon.
Yeah. Wrong expression.
Yeah, I was just reading up on it, and I still don't understand it. I don't. Well,
it is kind of hard
and all that kind of thing, like computations and how people come up with these. And if you acquire like a new, through your, if you manage to be the first person to compute this blockchain or whatever, and you get the 12.5 or whatever Bitcoins allotted to you that are worth like $225,000 for doing that right now. I don't understand what any of that means. I just regurgitated something I read, but like it makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And another thing too, I think this is like kind of a I think people that come from a more like anti-government philosophy, or that they are they like to use this, like Silk Road. know?
It's a decentralized thing. It's
decentralized.
unregulated, and it's not. The thing that draws me to it is it's not rooted in our current like super corrupt evil banking system that we're all trapped in. But
Yeah.
it's not even. I mean, it's almost not even a viable currency at this point. There's a lot of vendors that'll take it, but nobody major. You're not going to buy something off of Amazon with Bitcoin or
Right.
Overstock seems to be
But
pretty
KFC
popular.
apparently you can, and Subway.
Overstock takes it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
that's
he
one
read
of the
off, I
one of
guess.
the
Well,
companies.
That's pretty major.
Yeah.
Some of the others are Fight for the Future, leading organization fighting for internet freedom. That makes sense.
Yeah.
IP Mart, Curry Up Now, a total of 12 restaurants on the list of restaurants accept Bitcoins in San Francisco Bay Area. Dish Network, Libertarian Party. There we go. Euro Pacific, CEX, Straub Auto Repairs, which is just one place in Hudson, New York. Yachtbase.com, Intuit, the software company. It's a big list, actually.
Yeah, they said about 100,000 vendors, though most of them
wow.
are smaller.
Naughty America takes Bitcoin.
Naughty America.
Naughty America. Yeah.
If I need any butt plugs, I know where to go now.
And apparently that's my face that creates action figures. That takes Bitcoin too.
That was in the Mall of America that day that you guys were at the conference.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
So both Naughty America and Save the Children take Bitcoin. Think about that.
I know where my money's going.
All right, guys. We're about time we get the guest on, so we're going to get Wren on. Maybe he can help explain a little bit of this to us. And, guys, we'll be back on Conspirinormal. Hey guys, back on Conspirinormal, and Windows 10 acted up again as usual. We don't know what was going on, whether it
going
was
to
at
happen.
Wren's in or us, but
This episode is going to happen.
yeah, it's going to happen. But we have struggled sometimes since Rob's computer updated to Windows 10. Wren, it's been just like it's just been weird, one weird thing after another.
Yep.
See, it used to be that you could call two different phone numbers, but you can't do that anymore. You could do a phone number and someone on Skype, but you can't, or you could do many different people on Skype, but you can't do the phone number stuff,
Jeez.
which is a little frustrating.
Yeah, that is.
So that's what we experienced with the Travis when we had Travis Walton on.
Mhm.
We were trying to get him and Jennifer Stein on at the same time, but it didn't work.
He was probably just getting white boy wasted, dude.
Getting white boy wasted, yeah. There's a story behind that. Luke had when we were at the Paradigm Symposium, actually in Minneapolis, man. We had Rob ended up taking Travis Walton and Richard Dolan back to the hotel, and Luke asked them if they wanted to go get white boy wasted with him.
Where in Minneapolis was that? When was that?
It was May of 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did they have it in downtown Minneapolis, or was it in like St. Paul?
No, it was. I can't remember. I don't remember the. Like it was close to downtown Minneapolis.
It was like maybe 6 miles away.
Yeah, because like Luke walked all the way from the hotel to downtown Minneapolis.
Oh man.
I was tired of paying for Uber.
Yeah, and
least-
we
At
had
least
a
you guys
good.
got to see it in May. At least May's a good month to come up here.
Yeah, it was cold for some of the time,
Mhm.
But we actually got offered to buy some Coke from somebody.
Yeah, 10 seconds after we got to downtown.
Right.
We found a place to park, got out of the vehicle, and someone was like, "Hey guys."
He's like, man, you want some Coke?
Did you get some?
No, we didn't
totally.
get any.
That would be wild. Just get fucking do an 8-ball with Travis Walton and Richard Dolan.
we were trying to go to a strip club, but Joe, our friend Joe, nixed that. He didn't want to cheat on his wife.
Yeah, that's totally not cheating, by the way.
Does he understand what a strip club is? I don't think thered be a whole lot of cheating going on. Mostly him just cheating his money out of his pocket.
Yeah, it'd just be blue balls, right? So we got you on here, man, to talk about your political beliefs, which I think are pretty interesting. You're one of the few communists that I know. Or you declare yourself a communist, but we were talking about Bitcoin in our intro, and are you an investor in the Bitcoin?
I am. I do cryptocurrency trading. I've been doing it since last June.
So does that mean not just Bitcoin, but some of the other cryptocurrencies too?
Yeah. I typically get Bitcoin and then I trade it for altcoins like Ethereum, Ubik, Stratus. There's a whole bunch of them. And you know, I've had some losses and I've had some wins, but overall, you know, I've done pretty good for myself doing it. Not rich by any means, but you know,
sure.
I have more money than I started with, which is always good.
Now, like, how does it work? Like, how does Bitcoin work? I guess is the question.
Well, you mean in theory or in an aspect of like trading with it?
I guess in theory and in reality.
Okay, so like in theory, Bitcoin is a virtual quote unquote currency that was created several years ago by a mysterious entity known as Satoshi Nakamoto, who is probably several people that were using some sort of, you know, like a pen name.
Gotcha.
But the basic idea is you have a system of ledgers and transactions that are built on top of what's called a blockchain. Now, a blockchain, a lot of people like to use that word. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. I'm going to give you a really simple explanation of this. So imagine you're playing a card game with your friends, but all of you forgot to bring money. Okay, but you decided you're still going to play for money. So you need to keep track of who wins what and who loses what, right?
Okay.
So you could have somebody in the group decide they're going to keep all the records. Okay, just one person. All right. That's the way our current system is with the banks. Okay, you just got one person that keeps track of all the transactions. Now, all the other people, you know, you want to trust your friends, but you can't necessarily trust them when there's money on the line, right? Like, you know, who knows, that person could change things. If that person forgets to do something, you know, it messes everything up. So the idea behind blockchain is like everybody keeps a record of it. Okay, so everybody at the poker table keeps a record of who owes who what and who wins and who loses. Now, if somebody at the table decided to get cheeky and say that they won more than they really did, well, then you could compare their record to everyone else's and say, no, you're lying. And then you could form a consensus and throw their record out. Okay?
Okay.
That's the way blockchain works. It's a distributed ledger of transactions. That's simply that. And like you hear about people mining Bitcoin, what a miner does is they operate one of those ledgers on their computer, okay, or a bunch of computers, you know. But basically, what that does, anytime a transaction comes across the network, it has to have so many confirmations from independent ledgers to say yes, this is a valid transaction. And in order to make those confirmations, it has to do basically a math puzzle. And the way Bitcoin's set up, those math puzzles get increasingly hard as time goes by and the coins are released. Now, there's like a finite number of the coins. So by nature, Bitcoin is deflationary. There's only ever going to be, I think it's like 21 million or something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, in practice, it was originally conceived as a way to do like, you know, basically trustless transactions across the internet without any need for a middleman or a banking system or anybody. You know, you can send money from here to your friend in China and it costs barely anything to do it. And there's nobody in the middle stop you, and it's pretty much instantaneous. Now, that's vastly different than what we had today. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever try to wire transfer money overseas, but it can take a long time, and the fees are crazy.
Right. And you got to
Right, so
deal
this
with
is a way to
exchange
get around-
rates, all that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's a way to get around that. Now, in practice, what Bitcoin has become, because we got to remember Bitcoin was a very old idea, at least in terms of how fast technology moves this day. It's been around for, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years now. So the technology with different coins that have, like, you know, what they call altcoins is actually better than what Bitcoin's currently doing. And so Bitcoin's become more of a store of value like gold. So it's better to think of it as like digital gold. You can use it to trade for other coins. You know, you can use it to hold its value. And if you ever hear people talking about, oh, Bitcoin's like a digital currency, they probably don't know what they're talking about. Like, no one should be using Bitcoin to buy things. Okay.
Gotcha.
Like it costs, the transaction fees are too high. The speed is not what it could be. There's improvements on it because it's an open source project, so there's constantly improvements on the source code of it, and things may improve later. But in general, like, I'm sure you've all have heard the story about the Bitcoin pizza, about how the guy spent like 2,000 Bitcoins to buy pizza when it was first out. We know when it was worth pennies, and that's worth millions of dollars today.
Right.
Now, we can't make fun of him too much because, he had no way of knowing that it was going to be as valuable as it is today. And in the same fashion, people, you were like, oh, if I just bought Bitcoin at $600, I'd be rich now. But honestly, you probably would have sold, when it hit 1,000 or whatever. Like, you probably wouldn't have held on to it. There are plenty of people who used it years ago to like buy drugs and stuff on Silk Road.
Right. Yeah. We were talking about that. Yeah.
You wouldn't have held on to it as long as you think you would have. But again, you can't really use something as a currency that has value that is that volatile. Like you can't knowably like buy a coffee with something that might be worth a Lamborghini 5 years later. Like the US dollar is relatively stable in terms of how much it's worth. It takes decades for inflation to really show like its face. The price of Bitcoin can fluctuate $1,000 in a day, easy.
So let's say if I have one Bitcoin and right now it's like supposedly worth about 18,000 something as of today.
About a month ago it was.
Okay.
Right now it's hovering between 11 and 10,000.
Okay. So can I go and somewhere and trade my Bitcoin for $10,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you would transfer the Bitcoin to an exchange that can make the transaction from Bitcoin into fiat currency. Like Coinbase is one of them, Gemini is another. And you transfer your Bitcoin to an address there, and you put in your bank information, like how they wired it to your bank, and you could trade it for US dollars.
Gotcha.
It's a lot of people talk about, oh, you can't turn it into cash or anything, or it's hard to, or it doesn't have liquidity. That's not true at all. Generally with those exchanges, you have to do like verification to like be in line with US laws. So you generally have to give them your address and like your phone number and that kind of thing. With the basic verifications of most of these exchanges like Coinbase, you can only withdraw like $10,000 a day, which, I mean, it's a pretty good amount of money anyways.
Sure.
But there are people who have a lot more than that. But if you do enhanced verification where, you provide like your photo ID and, like a bill showing that you do live where you live and stuff, and that's all to fit within, US law, then you can transfer out like about, I think, 100,000 a day.
So you said that it's finite. So you said there'd be 21 million. Have all those been mined, or is that
Just over half from what I've read.
okay?
Yeah, about half. I think that's right. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think it's like 21 or 22. I could be wrong on that.
It was 21, yeah.
It's 21. Yeah. So it's like, that is why a lot of people, and why I encourage people just to hold it, like I want to know what the price is going to be when all of them have been mined, because then you've got something there's never going to be another Bitcoin.
Gotcha.
And, what does that do to a price? So mostly, I trade in these altcoins like I send my Bitcoin to an exchange, sort of like it's like the U.S. stock exchange. I put in orders, buy, sell orders, that sort of thing, and I buy altcoins that for projects that I think are solid, and it's just like investing in a stock. I try to get the best kind of entry price that I can by doing some technical analysis on the charts, and then kind of just hold it until it's worth more. And generally, if the price goes up 100%, I'll sell half my position, to go ahead and lock in profits. But the idea is that I'm trading these altcoins to get more Bitcoin.
Okay.
Because you can make more Bitcoin doing that than just buying it with money I make from my job.
So the altcoins are basically like a smaller measurement of the broken down amount of the Bitcoins.
Not really. The altcoins are all like their own individual projects. So they're all built on the same kind of idea of the blockchain technology, but some of them have like wildly different goals and stuff. Like Ripple is one I'm sure you guys have heard about. It's been really popular lately. Saw a huge price increase. Ripple is a coin that specifically is they're aiming for it to be used by banks and financial institutions to transfer large sums of money quickly, which is something that's not possible today. I've got problems with Ripple itself because it's a centralized coin, and sort of the idea of Bitcoin and sort of the idea of the blockchain technology in the first place, and why I'm involved with it as a Marxist, is because I think it's a revolutionary idea in regards to like the financial markets and bankers, because it takes capital and the control of capital away from bankers and away from central banking. So Joe can send money to Shirley without having to go through a bank, and it cuts into their bottom line. But something like Ripple is providing services in a centralized manner where the coins are private, and these financial institutions can form like private payment channels between themselves. And I think that goes against the spirit of it. But if people believe in that, they believe the project's going to blow up, then by all means buy Ripple. But it's something that I'm kind of staying away from.
And Bitcoin is not a Ponzi scheme.
No, it's not a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, that's kind of an inside joke because you were on Cruising with Steak and you had a guy hang up on you yelling that it was a Ponzi scheme.
What was funny was he was saying that until he found out that he had a bunch of Steam coins from Steam It. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Steam It.
Yeah, I know it's Steam It. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and found out that he had like $1,500 worth of Steam. Then he was like, "Oh, okay, it's cool now." But I've talked to him about it a bit too. Like we're friends now, and he was right to an extent. What he was saying, I don't think he understood that there were things other than Bitcoin, and there are Ponzi schemes within the cryptocurrency space. The big one that recently blew up just like a week or two ago was BitConnect. BitConnect was a company that was literally fit every single definition of a Ponzi scheme. Like they said, you send us Bitcoin and we've got this trading bot, doing air quotes here, trading bot that will trade that Bitcoin, and it always wins. And then we'll pay back you in US dollars based on the profits from this magical trading algorithm that they couldn't actually prove existed. And a lot of people bought into it. And the way they had it set up was if you refer your friend, then you get a portion of their profit. And if they refer somebody, you also get a smaller portion of that person's profit too. So it literally rewards the people at the top versus the people at the bottom who joined late. And
right.
It was obviously a Ponzi scheme. You had a lot of people in the cryptocurrency community on Twitter telling people this is a Ponzi scheme and you just stay away from it. But BitConnect had a really good marketing team. They held these big events and were like promising these crazy returns. They're like, you'll get 1% back a day, every day. And it finally blew up. They had a couple things passed against them. I think in Florida and Texas, where the state legislatures there, hit them with a cease and desist order. And the way a Ponzi scheme works is you keep bringing in new people to pay the original investors, and you just try to keep it going as long as possible. And what I think happened was because Bitcoin's price fell a bunch, it hit 20,000, I think early December or mid December or something, and it fell all the way back down to about 13,000. And that huge drop, I think, caused them to lose a bunch of money. And all of a sudden they had, like the game was up basically. They didn't have enough money to pay everybody.
Yeah, it came tumbling down. Yeah.
That's when a Ponzi falls apart. And they closed down everything the other day. And it was funny. They said they gave people back their money, but what they gave back to them was a specific BitConnect token. It was like their proprietary token. And they said, okay, well, you're going to get back your BitConnect token at, the same amount. It's like worth exactly the amount of Bitcoin that you had invested or whatever. So, hey, everyone gets their money back. But what happened was everyone immediately went to exchanges and dumped all their BitConnect coin. The price went from $300 to like 98 cents in like an hour.
Oh, shit.
So people lost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh.
And people, I hope to God people are going to jail over this, because it's just, they were these guys on YouTube like promoting it constantly, being like, yeah, sign up, you're going to be rich, just getting people's greed, and since the cryptocurrency markets are basically unregulated at this point, they can get away with shit like this. And it's a shame, because it scares away people from getting involved in cryptocurrency, because they hear stuff like this.
Right, it gives it a bad name.
Yeah, it does. And it's not a bad thing. Like, I know people who've made a whole lot of money off of cryptocurrency. I've made an okay amount of money. I made a lot of stupid mistakes when I first got started, but that's just growing pains and, expensive mistakes. But, I'm still doing good for myself doing it. And, it's fun for me too. Like, it's fun for me to trade it. It's kind of like gambling a little bit. I'm a little bit of a degenerate, so I enjoy like the thrill of doing it. But I try to make sure that I have good odds on stuff. But you never know. It same goes for investing in stocks. You never know which direction something's going to go, and you can buy in and price drop.
You can only make educated decisions on it.
Exactly. That's what a lot of people get into. A lot of people don't make educated decisions. They just buy whatever people are telling them to buy on Twitter. They don't know anything about reading the charts. They don't know anything about the fundamental aspects of what you're investing in. That's why a lot of people, what they'll do, they'll buy. There are people who are like mortgaging their houses and buying Bitcoin at $18,000, and I'm just like, guys, the price is up 3,000% over the last year. There's no way this is sustainable. Like, it can't just keep going up forever and ever and ever. And yeah, it'll go back up, but I guarantee you, all those people who bought at 18,000 sold when it hit 10,000, and lost a ton of money. And then they'll wait until it starts going back up again, and then they'll buy the top again. It's, people always hear, buy low, sell high, but in actual practice, and I can say this from experience, in actual practice, it's hard to do that, because you see something going up and up and you're like, oh, I got to get on board, I got to get on the train. But it's like, you've already missed the train, you need to wait for the next train to come to the station, because there's always going to be a next train. You just got to be patient.
Where does the value actually come from in Bitcoin? That's what confuses me. I don't understand. I guess I don't understand what it represents.
It represents basically the value of the technology itself. It's kind of like when you buy Apple stock, right?
Sure.
You're investing in like Apple's technologies and their products. So when you invest in a cryptocurrency, you're basically investing in that company and investing in whatever that project is trying to accomplish. And again, things are only valuable because people are willing to pay money for them.
So you're becoming the backer instead of the bank.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. That makes a little more sense.
Yeah. And you saw this. This is why Bitcoin went from $20,000 down to $10,000, because it was overvalued.
Right.
And like, it may keep going down to 8,000. That's what a lot of people are predicting right now. I bought a little bit more at 12,000, and I bought a little more at 10,000, but I'm probably going to hold off and wait and see if it hits 8,000 and really go, hard into paint on it.
Okay. So back to the mining. Mm-hmm. Mining is discovering new avenues, or like, I don't really get how that whole thing works.
Mining, you got two different types of things that could be considered mining. You got staking and you got mining. So Bitcoin is a proof of work algorithm, or proof of work mining system. Basically means that when a transaction comes across the network, it comes packaged with a sort of like math puzzle.
Right.
Right. And you use your computer to do the math puzzle, and whoever figures out the puzzle first, like, gets that block, and they get the fee. It's basically you get paid a fee for processing the transaction.
Okay.
And so what a lot of people do, you know, it's basically impossible at this point to mine Bitcoin as an individual. You'd basically join a mining pool. So you'd put your processing power into a pool with a bunch of other people, and then you'd share the fee if you get it. But it's a way to incentivize people to operate nodes and to basically create the network.
Okay.
It's kind of like the internet. Like, you're adding a server to the Bitcoin network when you mine.
Okay.
So if nobody mines, then Bitcoin wouldn't work because it wouldn't have any nodes to do the transactions through. And it's got to have consensus. It's got to have more than one node to say. And that also what makes it decentralized too, because no one person has control over that network. You know, you've got to have multiple nodes confirm a transaction. Now, the other kind is staking or proof of stake. The way that works, because there's problems with proof of work, because it uses a lot of processing power, uses a lot of electricity, and it's only using more. I'm sure you guys have heard how much electricity just Bitcoin uses. And that's a major problem, and something people who are in that space are trying to figure out how to work around. The other way you can do stake, where basically you put up some of your money as collateral to allow transactions to occur, right? So say you got to verify a transaction, right? And by doing that, when the transaction is verified, you get a small fee and get your coins back. Now, this doesn't use a lot of processing power. You know, it's much more easy on computer and easy on the network than like proof of work. But it's a different sort of system that has its own risks. But it's useful in some ways because it allows people to make passive income by holding the coin. You know, so it's like Lisk is an example. Lisk is an altcoin, and if you own Lisk, you can. There's 101 delegates that are always active at one time, and these are kind of like the 101 nodes that are processing transactions. And each Lisk user can vote for a node, right? And only the top sort of 101 that receive the most votes process transactions on the network. And the way those delegates usually work is if you vote for a delegate, then you get a small cut of whatever fees they get. So just by voting for people and holding the coin, you get more of it, every week or whatever, or whenever they pay out. Now, it's usually not much, but you get paid more the more you have. So, if you've got 10,000 Lisk, then, you get a pretty good amount. Someone like me who might only have 400 or so, it's like you get maybe a tenth of a coin every week or something, but it's free money.
Yeah. True. Very true.
That's sort of more like getting dividends on a stock, where you kind of get paid for holding the stock.
Well, did you have a question?
A tenth of a coin's like $1,000 though, right?
Well, not for Lisk. Lisk's worth like $20.
Oh,
yeah. Bitcoin would be, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, the other
Bitcoin, yeah.
Right. Let's get into the meat of this interview. Talking about your political viewpoints. This is something that's come up. I've heard you drop hints about it on Where Did the Road Go, and I'm just interested in this. It's kind of like your point of view, because I think I don't really know where kind of the political viewpoints of the people that listen to my show, whether they may be like in the middle to maybe to the more conservative. So I'm interested in hearing about your political viewpoints. You describe yourself as like a Marxist.
Yeah. I mean, I self-identify as a Marxist.
Okay. So what does that mean to you?
So Marxism is basically a social theory, created by Karl Marx, that uses a thing called dialectical materialism to take a look at sort of the history of the world and why we are at the point we are in history. And the basic idea of it is that our current culture and systems and relationships with other people are entirely based on the material conditions of those people in the society. So the big thing is right now, we live in a capitalist society in the USA. Most of the world's superpowers are capitalist. But that is a relatively modern invention. Kind of since, I guess, the 17th century or so, when things like the French Revolution and other revolutions kind of overthrew feudal systems and aristocracy. And those revolutions were largely put in place by, sort of the capitalist middle class, like shopkeepers and merchants and traders and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the bourgeoisie. Yep.
Yep, exactly. And basically, the way a capitalist system works is it exploits the labor of the working class. It takes all the fruits of their labor away from them and kind of pays them back in crumbs. And not only that, but like oppresses them through things like the police state, through racism, through, in some countries, fascist systems. But in a socialist system, you have a society that's not ruled by the elite. It takes the means of productions away from the capitalist class, puts it in the hands of the working class or the society as a whole. Like, I assume you guys aren't CEOs of a company, right?
No, we're CEO of Conspirinormal.
I'm CEO of my fry station.
Yeah.
So you're workers. I'm a worker.
Mm-hmm.
Probably everyone you know is a worker. Okay? Like, when one of the kind of ideals of socialism is basically seizing the means of production from these people and abolishing private property. And I think that's where a lot of people get confused when they first hear that, because by private property, they don't mean, I think, what you think they mean. When most people think private property, they think about the things they own. That's personal property, like your house, your toothbrush, your PS4. Those are things that belong to you. No one's wanting to take those things away.
Mm-hmm.
When Marxists talk about private property, they're talking about like the factories, the mines, the media infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure, healthcare, communications, education, that sort of thing. Those are all systems that are run on advancing profit, because that's the goal of a capitalist system, is to profit. Okay? So in a socialist system, you take control away from those things, you make them collectively owned by everyone, by the workers, and they're run on the basis of fulfilling your needs. So, there's a famous saying by Marx, like, to each according to their needs, and from each according to their means.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So basically, you organize the system to utilize all the available resources to meet the needs of society, right? You unchain labor and you allow the state to provide basic necessities across the. We have more than enough money and capital in our system to do that.
Hey, Wren, is your mic cutting in and out? Because we're like,
could be my internet connection. Is that any better?
It's good for the most part. Every now and then it's just dropping.
Okay. So, you mean repeat any of that? I don't know if you guys got everything.
I don't think I heard the last couple of things.
Okay. So basically, in a socialist system, you can take the available resources that are now collectively owned. You can allow them to achieve their full productive potential, and you can have the state provide all the basic necessities at no cost to the individual. So things like healthcare, food, housing, and recreation, those things are provided to everyone at no cost. I mean, I don't know. It sounds pretty good to me.
Well, it sounds kind of like an ideal, I mean, my main problem,
mm-hmm.
and I want to, I'll say this. My main problem with communism is it's like it seems like an ideal. In practice, it just hasn't worked out as well.
Yeah, and I can go into that. So there is a difference between communism and socialism, right?
That was the next question. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't have communism without socialism. Socialism comes first, all right? Because you have to have socialist revolutions in order to pave the way for communism. Like, I honestly think like places like the Soviet Union or whatever, they jump the gun on calling themselves communist, because you can't quite do the communism until all the capitalists are gone. So, and that's exactly why those places failed. So let's talk about Russia to start with. So prior to 1917, Russia was a fucking terrible place to live. Almost all of it was completely impoverished. You had things like famine and starvation were commonplace. Women were exploited in factories and fields. Workers labored long hours for almost no pay. You had peasants that worked all summer long harvesting crops, and in a sort of a feudal type system, they were just, they had to hand over basically everything except, just the bare minimum for them to get through the winter. And a lot of time they didn't make it through the winter. And there was no public education at all. So after the 1917 revolution, within just a couple of decades, the Soviet Union was able to industrialize the entire country, get rid of landlords, collectivize agriculture, and provide free and universal healthcare and education to every Russian citizen. And, their big accomplishment is they kicked the Nazis' asses in World War II. They won the war. So that was kind of the beginning of the end, because they had to spend so many resources fighting against Nazi Germany. Their entire country was like devastated. They lost a ton of their industrial capability because of that war.
True.
They lost tens of millions of lives, and that weakened them significantly. And then World War II is followed by the Cold War, where, the U.S. basically messed with them at every single turn and eventually caused the collapse of the Soviet Union. And you see a lot of and there were other problems too. Like, one of the problems you've seen in several sort of socialist revolutions is that while it's supposed to be a state for the people, by the people, and that fulfills the needs of the people, what happens is you still end up with a ruling class of people who become increasingly disconnected from the needs of the common people. I mean, you saw this in Russia. You see this in China as well. And, China eventually started playing around with world markets, and they've basically become a capitalist society again, too.
They're communist in name, basically.
Basically, yeah. I mean, they still have some communist policies and stuff, but in general, they're more of a capitalist system nowadays.
Right.
Now, one place that has managed to basically survive with socialism intact is Cuba. Cuba has like the highest life expectancy in Latin America. It's highest literacy rate. Their infant mortality rate's actually much better than the U.S. Everyone there has free school, free healthcare. They actually provide medical training for people. Like if you want to become a doctor, you can actually go to Cuba and study medical school, like go to medical school there for free.
Yeah.
And they have some of the best doctors in the world live in Cuba. And that's large, and this is in spite of like decades of the U.S. trying to choke them out. It's incredible. I just can't believe they haven't collapsed yet.
Yeah. I think things are going to change though soon over there. It's kind of getting to the point where their markets are going to open up, and there could be.
Maybe
some exploitation of it.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Another thing people like to bring up too is like the famines in Russia. Like, Stalin starved, 4 million people or whatever. There's a couple ways you can look at that. Like a lot of people don't understand what caused the famine. The main reason behind that famine, and it did happen, and a lot of people died because of it. The main reason behind it was a lot of their farmland was in the Ukraine. And they had sort of the Ukrainian farms were still privately owned by a class of people called the kulaks.
Right.
So the kulaks controlled the farms in sort of a feudal system, and the Russians said, well, we're a socialist country now. We got to collectivize the farms. And the kulaks didn't like that very much. So in response to that, they decided to call Russia's bluff and start burning their own crops. They burned their own cattle, and they would also burn the crops of the collective farms that they'd set up, largely with Jewish immigrants. And they were counting on the fact they're like, well, even if we burn all our stuff in protest, Russia's not going to just let us starve. Like they'll send us food, right? The problem is they produced like 40% of the food for the Soviet Union, so of course they didn't have food to send them, and a lot of people starved to death. basically the kulak's fault. And so they actually
That's an
held off.
interesting perspective that I've never heard.
Yeah, you generally won't hear that, because especially propaganda in America needs to put forth the idea that socialism's scary and bad, and that that they did it on purpose and all this kind of stuff, when it was really still the remnant capital interests in that country that caused that famine to happen. And they actually waited 2 years. They said, okay, whatever, we'll wait 2 years. You guys can continue to operate your farms. We won't try to collectivize again. And then, after 2 years passed, and they decided to try to collectivization again. And they did the same shit. They burned their crops. They threw a fit. A lot of people starved again. But who didn't starve were the kulaks, right? Because they had money. They could still buy food. It was the people working the kulaks' farms that starved to death. Anyways, that's when they finally said enough is enough. And a lot of the kulaks got sent to the gulag, or, took a bullet, because they were through with it. And that's one of the problems with a lot of the socialist revolutions is they're necessarily violent, because the powers of capitalism will hold on to the bitter end with what they have, right? They won't let it go. That's why in the U.S. you have things like, the police here. And that's when a lot of people realize about the police in this country. 90% of crime is because of inequality. Okay, in a socialist system where everybody's needs are provided for, everybody has healthcare, everybody has an education, everybody has housing, everybody has food. You don't really have that much crime, and you don't need police. People lived for thousands and probably millions of years. Human beings lived for millions of years with no cops, and you could seriously there's no need for a police force in a socialist system, and the police that exist in this country today exist solely to protect the interests of capitalism. They protect property, they protect the rich. They don't protect and serve the common people.
As far as Russia is concerned, and we'll get back to today and whether there's, in your opinion, this can lend a solution to what's going on now. As I understand it, Marx Russia would have been the last place that he thought the revolution would happen. Because Marx was a Western European, he was a German. So he saw that, where this should happen would be Germany, France, Britain, those places that had an established economic industrial base.
Yeah. I think the idea was that, especially in Dust Capital and stuff, he was mainly looking at places that were industrialized. So
there would be this transitionary period of basically what is called socialism, that slowly, the reins of industry and capital would be put in the hands of the people. The government would take care of it for a while, and then slowly that would disappear, and then everything would be, you would have pure communism. That was, I'm sure you guys are familiar. That's Marx's idea. But Russia hadn't done that. They had barely entered the industrial age by the time World War I happens and by the time the Russian Revolution occurs. And at some point, they started this whole idea of war communism during the Russian Civil War. And at some point after that, they realized that just wasn't working. This kind of rush to collectivize just wasn't working. And so they had the new economic policy of the early 1920s, which is more of a return to basically some forms of capitalism. And the kulaks, as you described them, they kind of come up around, they're a little bit before, but they kind of rise, get more power around that time. And then there's this rush to collectivize again.
Yeah, because they saw the writing on the wall. They saw that what was happening, they were being undermined.
Yeah, and I understand, as I've understood it, that rush to collectivize was essentially a disaster. And the same thing with the Great Leap Forward in China as well. That was another one that was about collectivization of not just agriculture, but also industry. And it was a huge disaster. And this led to the death of this led to the death of a lot of people. The big thing with Stalin is the I think more so than the famines is are the purges as well, and just how tightly controlled Stalin was.
Yeah.
The control that he had over his country. And I've heard you describe, let's say, like Stalin was right.
Well,
and I say that's a very
slowly,
that's a very unpopular theory, even among a lot of communists, right? Because definitely the Trotskyists don't think that Stalin was right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of Marxists that hate Trotsky too, but I mean, when I say that, I'm also like being partially ironic and just trying to get
right. I got you.
So he was right to persecute the kulaks. He messed up in other places. I mean, like, no one's perfect, right? Like, I mean, literally, I think a lot of people think that these socialist revolutions, it's like the first time in history people have been trying to do this, right? And so obviously the first couple of attempts are not going to work out as well because you still have fallible people in charge that are doing the things. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for it. It just means that, the system is hard to implement. It's hard to get rid of like the things that capitalism breeds into culture and society as well. I think it's one reason Mao Zedong had, this great cultural thing. Like the idea was, and I think it's mostly driven out of fear. They thought that there were elements within their system that they were trying to bring back capitalism, and they were doing things to try to head that off. And there were probably a lot of innocent people who died because of that.
Right.
And there are probably people who actually were counter-revolutionaries who died, but you have to look at it from the perspective of all of the sort of capitalist superpowers, because the U.S. emerged as basically the number one capitalist superpower after World War II, and you had people like Patton wanting to immediately go to war with Russia.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they basically faced opposition from day one, and you have to look at how that sort of opposition from the most powerful sort of capitalist state in the world would cause you to mess up over and over again, because you just got this huge looming bear just bearing down on you all the time.
I don't think that I don't think that the Russians or the Soviets, I don't think that they were totally innocent though.
No, I mean there were people there were people in the party that were like not in tune with the needs of the workers, and that's something that a lot of studies of Marxism and stuff bring up.
Yeah,
was that you have to maintain, and that's another problem with like labor unions in the U.S. too. You have these systems that are supposed to protect the needs of the workers, and yet you have a system of bureaucrats that emerges from that sort of revolution who are disconnected from the workers and try to make concessions to the capitalists. And all it does is halt progress, and it undermines the whole revolution.
Well, I think it just all comes down to like human nature. This is my opinion. I mean, I think there's no such thing as pure. There can never be anything such as pure communism, just like there could never be such a thing as pure capitalism, like what Adam Smith wrote about.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think human nature just takes over every single time, and it's something always happens.
I agree. We need robots to supervise us.
Yeah.
The Bitcoin algorithms.
Yeah. I mean, I disagree on that. And, this is a Marxist idea that humans are not inherently greedy, that greed is built into them by capitalism. Because for hundreds of thousands of years, primitive humans lived without greed, without profit, and without private property.
Yeah, but I think they were probably still pretty horrible to each other, though.
I'm sure they killed each other and did bad things to each other, sure.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that a lot of what we think of as like modern warfare came about because of civilization. Like basically, if you look at the beginnings of so one of the big things in Marxism is class consciousness and like class theory, right? So, you have two classes of people, basically the haves and the have-nots, the workers and the capitalists, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Now, that whole system emerges from things like agriculture and city building, because once people started producing a surplus of food, you had some group of people hoarding that surplus instead of distributing it equally amongst everyone in the group. And then those people needed to have ways to protect themselves from the group, right? Like, because, the group's not just going to sit by and let this one person hoard everything. So that's why things like police forces and why things like, armies and guards were created, basically to protect that group at the top that has all of that extra surplus. And you see this system evolve throughout history to things like slave societies, like in ancient Rome, where 50% of the population is slaves, and they have to have this huge standing army just to protect themselves from the slaves. To after the collapse of the Roman Empire, you have like feudal systems in Europe that basically did the same thing. You have serfs that are living on this land. They don't own anything. They work the farm for the privilege of getting enough food back to maybe survive the winter. But every bit of their surplus goes to the Lord, and the Lord's hire knights and an army to take care of them whenever the peasants get feisty. And you see the same thing today, where basically a small group of billionaires controls both our government and all of the capital and means of production in this country, and the police force acts as their private army to protect them from you and me.
Well, it seems like that's where we're getting to, doesn't it? Because Marx, one of his theories, and I'm sure you're aware, was that the revolution would not come until, and it's almost like Lenin and those guys in Russia, it was all premature because this had not happened yet. They thought it was happening. It's almost just like prophecy in the evangelical community. We think it's going to happen, so we need to do something. But it's interesting how there's a parallel there. But what Marx said was, what is going to happen is fewer the means of production are going to become invested in fewer and fewer hands. To eventually you maybe just have a few people that control everything at the top. And then at that point, the revolution would come. That's what he said.
Yeah, no, and he's right. I mean, and what you have emerge from that progression of the accumulation of capital to the top elites is you have the emergence of fascism, because they have to keep your eyes off the ball. That's how they do the magic trick. They have to misdirect you. They have to foster things like racism, sexism. They have to distract you from the fact that they're the ones controlling your life. And as people become more and more displeased, they have to ramp that up, and they start having to implement fascist policies that take away rights, that try to keep you from organizing, that try to keep you from fighting for a better life for you and other workers. And I mean, you see that happen. It's a process that's happening in the U.S. right now. I mean, you've got them talking about implementing a national right to work policy across the country, which would decimate labor unions, because labor unions are the only thing that allow workers to collectivize and draw concessions from the bosses and the capitalists. So they don't want you to organize, but now they're doing it through policy. What they used to do when you organized and when you had strikes is they would hire a bunch of Pinkertons to come out and beat your ass and shoot you.
Right.
Nowadays they put in legislation like national right to work. And when you get hired at a company, you go to work for Target, they make you watch a hour-long video, on your first day about how unions are bad, and you shouldn't be in a union, you shouldn't have any kind of collective bargaining agreements or anything. And they try to make people love their bosses. They have national boss appreciation day. Like, that's what I don't understand. It's like, why, since when did your boss become your friend? Because I at least remember a time in at least music that I've heard from, like, I'm not old enough to have lived in the 70s, but I remember music in the 60s and 70s that portrayed the boss man as the bad guy.
Yeah.
And now we're supposed to love our bosses. That's also what I don't get about people who kind of lean more right, who are workers, right? They're at the bottom, like the literal bottom. And yet they love capitalism. and they hate Marxism. Even though all they have to lose is their chains.
Lucas
they will
over here
fight.
nodding his head when you were saying that.
Yeah, they'll fight for the capitalists, and they don't understand that it's a boot stomping on their face, and they just lick in the boot. They love it. They love the taste of that boot. I don't understand it at all, because it's like, what are you fighting for? You don't even, like, people, especially recently, you know, they're like, oh, the stock markets are the best they've been in years, and it's like, do you even own stocks? Like, why would it
Rob's
matter?
gonna have to do a lot of editing on this one.
Oh wait, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Let me mark that down.
It's all right, Red. Luke is wanting to ask something. He's over here smiling, nodding his head.
I'm a capitalist through and through, dude. I just
He's
like
But, so what do you have to gain from it, though? I mean, do you own stocks? Do you have any capital? I mean,
No.
do you own a factory?
no, I
something?
don't. But you
I
know,
mean, he's my basket.
I'm a fry guy in a barbecue restaurant. I like I make poverty level wages. Yeah, but
Yeah.
But the thing is, if I were to get off my ass and actually apply myself, like I know I'm smart enough to move up sorry, Rob. Move up the ladder.
But that's the thing, though. It's just a step ladder, right? Like, you'll never get anywhere near where the people who control this country are. You know, you might have a little more comfortable life, but they can take that away from you at any moment.
Right.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're,
I
you know,
understand that.
it's like you're just, you know, like, there's a limit to what we can achieve. They feed you this line when you're in school that, you know, you can achieve your dreams and everything, but, like, they're going to take everything away from you because you have no power. You know, like, and I'm not saying, like, in a socialist system there wouldn't be money or anything. You'd get paid more, you know, like, everyone, because when you work, you know, like, you really only get paid for like an hour or so of your 40-hour work week.
Mhm.
You know, you're not getting the money that you're generating. The product of your labor is being sucked right to the top of the company you work for. You know, like, you had the Circuit City, like, have to lay off 4,000 employees because they're paying them too much. The average wage for them was like minimum wage. Okay. But their CEO still pulled an $8 million paycheck that year.
Oh yeah.
Like, where's the problem there? There's some kind of allocation, distribution problem in this equation. You know, like, that's the thing. And that's what I don't understand.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Like-
that's a real problem that we face. It's a real problem.
I see all that happening. I see that, but from my personal experience, you know, I'm not the smartest guy, but I also got a factory job making 16 and some change an hour, which was far above what I required to, you know, make a decent living. So I had enough, like, I had paychecks, you know, stacking up, and I didn't even really have to apply myself to get this job. I mean, like, it was just your run-of-the-mill sort of application process.
But you know why you were making that much money at the factory, right?
No.
Unions.
It's because of the sweat and blood of unions that fought for factory workers for decades in this country. You know, like, that's why fast food workers make pennies, is because they don't have a union. And that's why unions are so important.
Okay,
were you a union member when you were working at the factory?
No, they didn't even have anything like that we could sign up for. Like, it was non-existent.
Yeah. And that's the way it is these days. It's hard to join a union these days. Most places have had the unions broken up.
So just to play devil's advocate here for a second, Wren, I want to take your Circuit City thing, and so say they lay off a whole bunch of people because they can't afford to pay them. So now their customers are not getting the attention they deserve. They're not getting the help that they deserve, and they stop showing up and they stop spending money and they start going somewhere else. So Circuit City starts going on a decline, and somebody else starts to rise up to replace them. That's how capitalism is, you know, kind of in theory intended to sort of work. Do you think that is not?
That's not what happened with Circuit City, though. When they announced that they were laying off people, their stock price went up. So they actually made more money. They were more profitable. And that's usually what happens. I mean, that's the big thing about unemployment figures in this country now. Unemployment looks lower than it has been, but that's because a lot of people have just dropped out of the workforce. It's also because a lot of companies have one person doing the jobs of 5 people now. Because production, in terms of like what we as workers produce in this country, is at all-time highs, and the amount of labor that's being extracted from you is far more valuable than like what you're paid in return for that work.
Sure, and I get that.
Yeah. So in your suggestion about like things like competition,
Right. Yeah.
so if we're talking about pure socialism here, the idea is that there's no profit, right? Like every business in a socialist system, every industry works on a non-profit basis, right? So in that case, if you don't have profit, then there's no competition.
The incentive for the evil, nefarious stuff isn't there.
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha.
Like people still get paid money, and there's still like currency and things like that, but there's no profit in the business. Basically, like let's say you work for Circuit City and you've got 7,000 employees, right? So all the money that Circuit City makes doing whatever they do, like, is equally distributed amongst all the people that work there, no matter what you do. And so, and they don't reinvest themselves. Like that money, normally what happens is when you work for a company, most of the money that you produce, you get paid a few crumbs of it, and the rest of it goes to the top, and they use it to reinvest in themselves. It creates this endless cycle. And the problem with this is there's an endless drive to grow those profits. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Like it never stops growing. Like, companies have to grow infinitely. And just like we saw with the Bitcoin price, when it hit $19,000, $20,000, it can't go up forever. Like that's the main thing I think a lot of people who are capitalists don't quite recognize, is that like in order for capitalism to like not collapse, there has to be infinite growth.
Yeah.
And we live in a finite planet with finite resources.
Right.
Like it can't grow infinitely. It'll eventually reach some point of stasis. There won't be any more growth, and it'll collapse on itself. And that need to grow is also what fuels things like war and imperialism, because that was one of the main reasons for colonization in the 1800s, 1700s. It's one reason for like our wars of aggression in the Middle East and stuff.
Yeah, natural resources. Yep.
Yeah, it's this need to open new markets, because eventually you wear out the market in your home country, right? You can't grow anymore. So then you got to start invading other countries to grow more.
Well, I was going to kind of bring that up earlier. I think that is inherent in every system, including political systems. And I think the growth and collapse is just another part of that. Like, I'm not saying that it's necessarily a good thing that, a society might grow and then crumble and then regrow and then crumble, but I think it might be inevitable, regardless of whether being a capitalist society or a communist society. I think it's just the nature of things. It's a cycle.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea behind socialism, is that you break that cycle, because without the need to grow, like you only produce enough for like everyone to have what they need, right? And we can do that. Like we do that today. We produce enough food to feed the world. Like the top, I think like 17 billionaires in the world have enough money to end world poverty 7 times over. Like the money is there. It doesn't make, I mean, I know it makes sense that we're not doing it because of greed and because these people need to control us. But like we produce enough using like science and technology to provide every human being in this world with a level of comfort that we don't even have right now. Even people who are like lower middle class like myself. Like we could provide healthcare, food, housing, everything to everyone, and like free education, guaranteed labor. Like that's the big Marxist thing, is that there's no unemployment. Like everyone has a job, right? If they want a job. The reason there's unemployment, and the reason why there'll never be no unemployment in a capitalist system, is because unemployment provides a reserve labor force to then compete with other workers, right? Because that's the thing you'll hear. Like you don't want to ask for a raise because this guy who's unemployed will do your job for $3 less than what you get paid. And that constant fear of being undercut is what keeps workers in line. And that's why unemployment is a manufactured thing.
And okay, so on the other side of that coin, though, do you think that the we'll call it the entry level workforce of various industries, do you think they don't need the incentives?
What do you mean by incentives?
Well, that drive that I need to make this, I need to work a little harder. I need to compete with the guy next to me to prove myself, that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could still have people wanting to like advance their careers and do more advanced things. But if everyone's basic needs are taken care of, then that sense of competition is reduced a little bit. There's still going to be people who are ambitious. like I'm ambitious, right?
Right.
I have a pretty comfortable life, but I'm still trying to get more for myself. Okay. There's always going to the idea that like welfare and things like that, kill people's ambitions. It's simply not true. People want to do a job. People generally want to work. They want to do something that fulfills them. And in a system where everybody's basic needs are cared for, then you don't have to worry about them being involved in a work system out of fear or basically slavery. I mean, let's face it, as workers, we're basically all slaves to capitalism, right? If we decided we didn't want to work anymore, then we're probably going to die.
Sure.
Or we wouldn't,
2 months
we
from
wouldn't
now,
have a
I'll be
home.
living under a bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that,
Or live in a cave like Luke used to.
yeah.
Like Luke tried to.
Well, let me ask
Yeah.
you this, Wren.
Mhm.
Okay, we talk about finite resources. How can we, if we were to have a global communist system
Mhm.
with the finite resources that we have, how can we take care of everybody at the same level?
By proper allocation of resources, again, to everyone according to need.
That's the problem, though, for me,
Mhm.
is that just who gets to decide that? And then
you'd have-
does the
yeah.
human nature aspect come into that once that people have to decide that?
Mhm.
It doesn't that just become its own form of dictatorship?
Ideally, you'd have a truly democratic system in place. I don't know if it'd be parliamentary or whatever. It wouldn't be like how the U.S. currently is. Ideally, you'd have some sort of democratically elected system that was built by people who had the best interests of the workers in mind.
And you'd have to and those workers would have to make them super accountable.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is they should also be workers themselves. That's one of the big problems in the U.S., right? Literally almost every single politician in the Senate, House, even down to mayors and governors and stuff, none of them are workers, right? None of them probably ever worked in their life. All right. They mostly all come from rich families or have ties to the banking sector or to industries, because in order to run for office in this country, you got to have a whole lot of money,
Right.
because you got to pay the media, and the media is controlled by the capitalists. So,
Or if you're Trump, you just manipulate the media.
yeah, I mean, as much as I don't like ancient Rome, I do like the idea that they had in their Senate where you had to be a farmer or a worker or whatever in order to be elected. And once you were done, there were no repeats, right? When you did your term, then you went back to your farm. You did being a farmer. All right. In my kind of ideal system, that's sort of how it worked. You would need to be common people would need to be elected to office, right? You take all the money out of it. You take all the media out of it, because in a socialist system, the media would be owned by everyone as well. They wouldn't have this profit incentive. And so, the media, let's say they would give airtime to, so-and-so, they wouldn't have to pay for it or whatever. And a lot of places are like that. I think in England and stuff, the whole campaigning process is only a few months long. And the state TV or BBC or whatever, like sets aside certain time frames for like different people to do like campaign speeches and things like that. It's not like it is here. But yeah, I mean, that is a problem though. These are one of the kind of problems that we'll have to overcome if we transition to a socialist system. You know, we can always look at the failures of the Soviet Union. We can look at the failures of communist China to get a better idea of what we should do the next time. Because, you know, I don't think it's the last time we're going to see a socialist revolution anywhere.
So where do you see us going now in the United States? I mean, what do you see that there's that there is more of a left-wing revival going on? Are we going to have a socialist more? Because we already kind of, in some ways, have a socialist system. We do.
We did. We had more of it, and they're trying to take away every single part of it they can. You know, defund Medicaid, defund, you know, CHIP for children's health care.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Education's a sham.
But
yeah,
you know, where do you see this going? Because I mean, honestly, I've thought about it and thought about it. This whole thing with Trump being elected, I almost think that this is almost like the last gasp of the right wing. Like it's going to really turn very radically to the left.
Well, I think it'll turn more towards the center than the left, because there's nothing a Democrat hates more. They put it this way: Democrats hate socialists more than they hate Nazis. And
that's an interesting statement.
they do, trust me, because a lot of people like to think of the Democrats as the left, and they're not the left. The Democrats are centrists. There's decent ones that are reformists, but they're not leftists. They're pro-war, they're pro-imperialism. You know, like, I don't have any love for the Democrats in this country. There has been a popular movement, at least amongst some people, to socialism in this country post Trump election. I think the DSA just hit 30,000 members. The Democratic Socialists of America, they just hit 30,000 members here recently. But overall, you still have a lot of the propaganda of the, you know, sort of the 60s and 50s and stuff that still influence people today. They have a lot of misinformation. A lot of people don't really understand what Marxism is, or why capitalism is bad, and why it's keeping you from having like a decent life. And you even see this kind of like red baiting or red scare kind of crap going on amongst the Democrats with this whole Russia investigation. You know, like there's still Democrats that think Russia's still a communist country. That's how ill-informed they are. So the future. All right.
That's totally not true.
Now, do you want the doom and gloom, or do you want the positive idea?
Doom and gloom.
All right. So doom and gloom first.
Rob has spoken.
All right. So doom and gloom. I've said this a couple times in different places, but this is assuming that we're living in hell world and everything's not going to get better. This is where I don't think things are going to go hard left. I think things have to get a lot worse before they're going to go there, if at all. Because in a lot of ways, this country has built up its police and military infrastructure to make itself like near undefeatable in terms of being able to like put down a revolution or anything. Kind of what I'm, based on different things I'm seeing, my sort of theory about what's going to happen in this country. It's a little conspiracy-ish, but you know, I'm on a show called Conspirinormal, so maybe that's okay.
Well, yeah, that's fine.
So what I see happening, we see increasing, you know, especially with this new tax bill, which is blatantly just like trying to suck up more money to the top. I believe the plan is to try to extract whatever wealth and whatever labor they can from people as quickly as possible, because I think the people at the very tippy top see what's coming in terms of like ecological collapse of Earth. I think they know things like global warming or, you know, climate change are happening. They know what it's going to cause, with the effects of it, the mass migrations, the drops in food production, the famine that's going to result because of that. I think they know what's going to happen. I mean, ExxonMobil knew what was going to happen back in the 70s. They ran studies on it, and like they calculated exactly how much like the sea levels are going to increase. And you know what they did in return? they, instead of like, trying to maybe stop it from happening, they like raise the height of their oil rigs a little bit to cover the, sea rise levels. So I think at the top, they know it's going to happen. They know things are going to get really bad. Places like we thought things like the migrant crisis from Syria was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Wait until places along the equator becoming like completely uninhabitable because of how hot it's going to be there. You're going to have a whole lot more people coming north and coming into the U.S. and there's going to be violence. There's going to be starvations. And I think the idea is suck all this money to the top, start building, basically your doomsday bunkers, your gated communities, build the infrastructure you need to ride this out until the proletariat rips each other to shreds, and militarize your police force and train them in military tactics. So you could put down any kind of insurrection to protect yourselves and ride out the disaster. We're already seeing this with the police force. Why do police forces need AR-15s and armored personnel carriers?
Yeah,
like
the militarization of the police, right?
Yeah. The only reason they would need to militarize themselves is they're thinking they're going to need to put down an insurrection within the country itself.
Well,
And
that's really dire, Wren.
It is, but we
Yeah.
talked a lot about that last year too.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. And what I see coming in worst case scenario is that, we all rip each other to shreds Mad Max style while the, top 1% kind of ride it out in comfort, protected by their militarized police force. And then they come out and reclaim everything. And then their power solidified for all eternity, And by that time they'll have, automated factories, completely automated workforces. They won't need workers anymore.
That is, if the blue avians don't save us first.
or the Space Brothers. That's what
Right.
Jay Posadas, he was a Trotskyite. He had believed that the Space Brothers were communists, and that if we just went ahead and nuked ourselves, then they would come down and help us clean up, and we'd have full luxury space communism.
Yeah, he was pretty interesting. I was going to ask you about him as well. Yeah.
I like to jokingly refer to myself as a Posadas just because, Posadas did have, like, the Trotskyite idea was eternal revolution, right? That's why some people don't like Trotsky.
Right.
Because on some level, he knew that unless the entire world became socialist, basically all at once, socialism or socialist revolutions would fail. Because you would still have these entrenched, powerful capitalist powers that would mess it up, or they would fight against it. And that is what happened.
Which is why I keep saying Google's going to become sentient. The robots will rise up and we'll all be okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably what is going to happen.
I'm waiting for it. I'm ready. I am ready to serve my robot overlords.
I just want to be a robot, honestly. Take out my brain and put it in a nice, sweet robot body.
So what's the best case scenario?
Same.
So best case scenario is
Unicorns and Skittles?
yeah. Best case scenario is, we start electing socialists into office and we start implementing actual socialist ideas in this country. We I can give you kind of my list of things that I want to see in this country. I wrote all these things down.
Yeah, that's fine.
So here's kind of the sort of 11 things. They're all really short, but 11 things that basically I want to see happen in this country. But number one, the right to free public education and job training. Like, everyone should receive free public education. Everyone should receive free job training. The demilitarization of schools, basically, stop military recruiters from going to schools. It's ridiculous. When I went to school in Walter Welborn High School in Alabama, and we didn't have a single college recruiter come to my school, but you bet we had a hell of a lot of military recruiters come to my school. And most of my graduating class, most every guy in my graduating class went on to the military, and they went and fought in Iraq, and a lot of them didn't make it back.
Yeah.
Number three, the right to health care. We need universal health care in this country. Absolutely. People want to have private health insurance plans and whatever, they can still pay for it. But there should be an option for everyone in this country to have Medicare if they want it. It shouldn't be we're the richest country in the world, and we don't even have universal health care for our people. There are countries way poorer than us that take care of their people way better than we do. Everyone has a right, and number 4, the right to housing. Everyone should have a place to live, right? If it's some kind of Title 8, Section 8 program for everybody, and it doesn't need to be like means tested to hell and back. That's the problem with a lot of social services in this country. We do have things that provide this for people, but you've got to go through this labyrinthine process to get it. And so most people don't even bother. But it's a shame that we have millions of homes in this country that are just sitting empty, like just bought on speculation. We could house everyone in this country today. Number 5, ICE needs to be completely disbanded. There needs to be no more raids and deportations. It's ridiculous what ICE is doing in this country and what they've been empowered to do by this administration. Everyone also deserves the right to a job or an income. Like, everyone should have a job. Like I mentioned before, unemployment is manufactured. It's a way for them to have a reserve labor force to promote competition between the workers, to keep them from looking up, get them fighting amongst themselves, then they'll never fight you. Everyone has the right to a clean and healthy environment. Like, things like the EPA have a reason. This is especially hits really close to home for me because the town I came from was horribly polluted for decades by the Monsanto Corporation.
Really?
Yeah. I come from Anniston, Alabama, and for decades, the Monsanto Corporation dumped PCBs into local water supplies. They buried it on public land. And there are thousands and thousands of people who are going to die of cancer, leukemia, have tumors on their body and stuff because of playing or being around infected earth or swimming in infected waters. And they knew about it. They knew about it for a long time. And there was a huge lawsuit in the 90s. And, so a bunch of people got class action suit. I knew people who were part of it and they got $18,000 out of the settlement or whatever. Like, that's going to cover cancer treatments. Most of them spent it within a year. And if you look at the amount they actually had to pay out, it equaled roughly a year of their R&D budget. That's it. It was a drop in the bucket for them, and they got away with murdering thousands of people. Number 8, shut down the prison industrial complex in this country. Like, the private prison industry in this country is outrageous.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Like, we incarcerate something like 2 million people. Most of the people are in on minor drug charges. And a lot of states have agreements with these private prisons to provide them with a certain number, like a certain quota of inmates per year. So the police are incentivized to arrest people and charge them with crimes at any cost. And generally that falls on people of color, marginalized people, and oppressed peoples.
Yeah, we have the highest percentage per capita of people imprisoned.
Yep.
Land
And
of the
it's a
free.
whole industry. There's millions and millions of dollars that are made every year off that. Because then those people are turned around and used for slave labor. Also, basically every person in this country has the right to self-determination. Basically, that just means to be free from racism, bigotry. That means equal rights for women. It means equal rights for lesbian, bi, transgender, and queer people. Everyone in this country deserves the right to live their life how they feel they should live their life. And number 10, almost done. We got to defeat U.S. imperialism, right? Like, we need to get the hell out of all these Middle Eastern countries that we're fighting and dying in for no reason other than to fill the pockets of the military-industrial complex.
Oh, hell yeah. I agree with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely, U.S. imperialism has to come to an end. And then, 11, actually, I think I already said this, but, justice and equality for all women, lesbian, bi, gay, transgender, and queer people. Like, everyone in this country deserves equal rights. Like, I don't care who you are, what color you are, who you like to have sex with, how you like to present yourself in terms of your gender. Everyone has the right to self-expression. Everyone has the right to live their lives how they want to live their lives. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of my bucket list of things that I would like to see change in this country. But best case scenario, we actually achieve these things. But it's going to require a lot of work, and it's going to require a lot of collective organizing and effort amongst people like you and me and other workers, you know. Like nobody can win all this by themselves. And we can't put our trust in one person like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or any other people. We can't put this all on the shoulders of one person. We have to work together. We have to collectively act, because no power structure in the history of the world has ever been overthrown by a single person.
How do your relatives, peers, coworkers, I mean, do you discuss any of this with them? I mean, how do people receive it when you talk about stuff like this?
I do occasionally. I mean, my family doesn't really have any strong political beliefs.
Gotcha.
My dad's never really cared about politics or religion or anything. So, I mean, I've talked to him about this kind of thing. You know, I live in Minneapolis. It's a pretty blue area. There's a lot of Democrats up here. So, you know, I've had some arguments with Democrats about stuff, about, you know, free markets and that kind of thing. I generally haven't really run into many kind of more conservative people or tried to argue with them about it. Even people that, it's kind of funny. I keep telling, you know, because I talk in the Cruising with Steak Discord a lot, and there are some people in there who are maybe just a little bit fash, or maybe like really conservative or right wing. Like, I'm not going to name names, but I guess they know who they are. But, you know, I need to engage with those people. You know, I don't need to just like hide from them or try to avoid them, because the way you educate people and the way you turn people to your side and the way you get people to understand things like class and class consciousness is to engage with them, and you're not in a condescending way, not in a way where you're trying to make fun of them or just don't. I mean, it's fun to make fun of people on Twitter, but in reality, like, the only way to ever find solidarity with other people is to just talk to them. And a lot of times I've been on late night conversations with some of these guys, and, you know, I've said things. I didn't necessarily say they were Marxist ideas, but I was just talking about things like the police and about central banking and stuff. And they're like, yeah, I agree with that. You know, and I'm just like slowly turning them into Marxists, you know, just
because there is stuff that we can agree on. Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, it's like even people who are conservative, there's things that we agree on. Like, they don't like the state. I don't like the state. They don't like the police. I don't like the police either. You know, there are things that we can all agree on here. You know, at the very base, I'm just saying I want everyone to have a comfortable, healthy, fulfilling life, you know, no matter who you are. And I don't think that's too much to ask, you know?
Yeah. I think it's good to engage. People need to engage more instead of just shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I disagree, and I disagree with you, so I don't want to even hear it. You know, there's a lot of that going on.
Right. And so social media should have provided us a platform for that, but it did the opposite somehow. I still don't understand why.
It caused people to form their own little silos, little echo chambers where they never talk to anybody who doesn't already share their views.
Yeah.
And it makes people who are conservative, makes them more conservative. Leftists, it makes them more leftist if they're not infighting. There's a lot of leftists infighting. But in general, yeah. I mean, like, that's funny. That's actually, I don't know if you guys ever played Metal Gear Solid 2. Like, Hideo Kojima actually predicted everything that's going on with social media in that game before there was even such a thing as MySpace.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, basically the idea was, as information becomes more free, people tend to only look at things that reinforce their own ideas. And they only talk to people who reinforce their own ideas.
Wow.
And so that, you know, they form these little tribal groups that never experience anything outside of their group.
What console was that on?
That's a PS2.
Oh wow, yeah, I played Sons of Liberty, the Vietnam one, and VR Missions on PS1. I guess I never played that one.
Yeah, everybody should play Metal Gear Solid 2. It's an incredible work of social importance.
Huh.
Well, Wren, thank you so much. What are you working on in the realm of the weird lately?
Well, I've been doing some kind of outreach, and my other thing of trying to recruit people to do is recruit people to do magic. I actually wrote a article called Liber Anarchia, which was sort of a beginner's primer to magic and sigil magic and sort of the spirit world and everything that has to do with sort of the occult. And I wrote it for an anarchist magazine called Street Fight, which does a really great podcast called Street Fight Radio. They're a lot of fun. And I've got an idea for sort of a book that I want to write. I just got to do a lot of research for it, but it's about like the intersection of the occult and sort of the UFO phenomena, specifically looking at like the shapes of the UFO phenomena. Like you see triangular UFOs, and like to me that has a parallel with the triangles of art that you see in Solomonic rituals, and sort of UFOs that are circular sort of remind me of like magic circles, and sort of the idea that UFOs could exist as sort of a a living, breathing like occult ritual.
Yeah, we need to get you on to talk a lot more about that aspect of your work too.
Yeah, definitely.
But this has been very good. It's been very good to talk to you about this.
Sure.
You guys, you want to add anything or?
Yeah, my brother made the point that astronauts have proven again and again on every space mission that the further you get away from the planet, the more your body starts to degenerate, the more physical therapy you have to do in space to maintain your a healthy body weight.
Mm-hmm.
So it would only make sense for a craft to have to be organic to be able to sustain the people or the beings on board.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of my idea for that comes from I don't know if you've ever read The Changing Light at Sandover by James Merrill, but it's a book. It's considered a book of apocalyptic poetry, but it's like a 600-page book it's like one long epic poem separated into several books. That's basically James Merrill and his partner channeled the entire book using a Ouija board. And they spoke to all these different spirits and intelligences and they asked them all sorts of questions, and some about like occult stuff and about UFO stuff. Like there's a point where he asked them about the flying saucers. It was like written in the 50s or the 60s. And the spirit he's talking to says that they don't know what the flying saucers are either. They said the flying saucers are kind of like bees. Like they seem to be created from the earth itself, and they are kind of like living packets of information. And I was like, ever since I read that was just the most fascinating idea to me.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've been pursuing.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
Makes a lot of sense, though.
Well, yeah. Wren, thank you so much. Where can people find your work?
I write kind of like not updated frequently blog at liminalroom.com. And I mostly just post stuff on Twitter at Mr_Apol. And you can also find me occasionally on Where Did the Road Go Roundtables. And do you mind if I plug a few kind of like leftist podcasts, just since the show had that theme?
Sure.
Yeah,
if
do
you'd
your
like.
thing, man.
Okay. So definitely there's a great podcast called Discourse Collective that talks about Marxist theory, culture. It's run by a bunch of really funny guys. It's always an enjoyable listen. They're guys and girls on there. And also Kudzu Commune, which is specifically run by some socialists from Alabama. And so I've been listening to it lately because it's been nice just hearing some Southern accents. I don't get to hear that very often up here. And, you get to miss it after a while. And if you want something, I know a very popular podcast, although your listeners may not be familiar with it, is Chapo Trap House, which is, a lot of people, some leftists have problems with the podcast. I definitely listen to it, but I listen to it because it's funny and because the people who are on it make me laugh. And, that's a problem with a lot of, especially Democrats and Republicans and other podcasts in this country. A lot of them are just so deadly serious all the time, and it's, why are we doing this stuff if we're not having fun doing it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Amen, brother. All right, Wren. stay on the line for us, and we're going to close this section out because we'll be back to close the show on Conspirinormal. Luke,
Yo,
what do you think about that?
I think that
You over here shaking your head and all
I'm
kinds
still
of stuff.
capitalist.
Fry boy capitalist.
I'm still survival of the fittest.
You just be like the Horatio Alger stories, just the fry cook that makes it big.
Well, it was a busboy that won American Ninja Warrior.
Oh, well, that changes it all, then, doesn't it? I mean, that changes the whole thing.
If that doesn't totally shift your perspective, I don't know what will.
I thought Wren had some pretty good points.
Yeah,
I felt that he did.
Yeah,
I don't think it really supports communism per se, but I think he had some good points.
And like you said, that at some point, it's a thing that looks really good on paper. It works out as far as, as long as you keep human nature out of the equation. And he even said himself at one point that, I don't remember maybe it was Karl Marx, but somebody said that, until the whole world decides that they're on board and jumps on board, it won't work. I think that's there's some truth there too.
Yeah.
And I think that capitalism can't work without some socialism. I don't think socialism can work without some capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a system that just is survival of the fittest without taking care of your core population and letting all the money bubble up to the top and kind of, starts to rot from the inside then. So,
yeah. It's always, you always have to have some kind of perfect balance.
There's elements of every different government going on here, really.
Yeah. I mean, people learn from the mistakes of history and they combine different theories and ideas to try to find something that works. And then you also have the difference between ideal and reality.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just what it is.
I definitely agree that what we have going on right now is not working and it's headed in an even worse direction.
Right. Right.
For me, man, like I already work in like the most brainless industry possible. And I've
you just drool into the fry grease all day.
No kidding. I've had people come in there and not be able to slice a half moon shaped quesadilla into 4 separate slices evenly.
Uh-huh.
I mean, think about that for a second. Can't that's the most basic,
Right. And that's my point. You want to pay that person the same thing that you get paid?
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't.
No.
I'm sorry that your mom was on drugs when she was pregnant with you. Like, that's not my problem. Like, if I knocked my girlfriend up, like, yeah, I would not let her do drugs and stuff. We would battle it out. Like, we would fight if she tried to. I would prevent that from happening. And I'm sorry
it's within the realm of personal responsibility.
Yeah,
yes, I agree.
I'm sorry that actually happens in the world, but that's not my responsibility.
Right. And there needs to be accountability too, because people are people.
Right. Again, it all goes back to human nature. Rob, tell everybody where they can find us on Patreon.
Yeah, if you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/Conspirinormal. We got several tiers there. We got a bunch of bonus episodes. We got to do something new there.
Yeah, we will be
soon. It's been a minute.
We will be
but,
soon.
There's already a lot of them up there, and as soon as you subscribe, you get access to all of them. There's wallpapers, and we still got some T-shirts left. And yeah, if you don't want to go there, you can do a one-time contribution through our website at Conspirinormal.com. And if you don't want to spend any money, we totally understand because we're all poor too. You can just support us by giving us a nice 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you happen to listen to the show.
Absolutely.
I'll send you nudes if you donate.
There you go.
Oh, man, $1,000 for some Luke nudes.
We got a new tier on the
Well, just
Patreon.
let's lower the bar a little bit, okay? Like,
Lower the bar a little bit.
maybe like $10 or
Yeah.
something. You know?
Luke in his Speedo with
be
his
the-
fry basket.
That'll be the new wallpapers from now on.
You get to choose the Speedo that you want from my collection,
And there are many.
or you can send me some.
No, what you ought to do is just take your fry basket and cover your crotch with it.
Just your spatula.
Hey, as much as I give a shit about my job, I will actually do that. Okay, I will get naked at my job if you guys donate.
Anyway, it's so good to have you back, Luke. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We're going to have Timothy Renner joining us, and we're going to try to do a short Patreon thing with him as well. So that's what
Ooh,
we
we're
should
doing-
have on.
Cryptozoology?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to talk about his book, Beyond the Seventh Gate. So
Word.
thank you guys for listening, and we will be back next time on Conspirinormal!
Mr. Sister Fister.